Okay, might just get started. Welcome everybody to Allied Health Virtual Conference. I'm Serena Jones. I'm the Director at Allied Health Support Services and I'm the co-founder here at Allied Health Virtual Conference. I will be your host for today's session, which is titled Mastering Your Dreams, Why Coaching Has a Place. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? All right, a couple of housekeeping bits and pieces before we get started. Questions, we love them. Please send them through via the chat function, which is on the right side of your screen there. And the Q&A function has been disabled for this session. So if you send them through via the text in the chat box, we will likely keep the questions until the right time in Bronwyn's presentation, and also at the end we'll have a bit of a discussion. So participants should all be on mute and your live video feed will be turned off. So don't worry, we can't see you and we can't hear you. And lastly, please be respectful of your colleagues and your peers. I do reserve the right to remove you from the session. Okay. Our gorgeous presenter today, Bronwyn Drysdale, welcome. Bronwyn is a registered occupational therapist and coach. She has a diverse background in clinical and non-clinical roles, such as health promotion and research. Maybe we can talk about that another day, Bronwyn.
Yes.
Today, Bronwyn provides coaching and OT coaching services to individuals, groups and organisations through her website, Mastery of Doing. So hop on over to her website and have a look. Bronwyn also works clinically in injury management and OC rehab. She teaches coaching techniques to OT students, and she's also the co-chair of the OT Special Interest Group for Coaching with OT Australia. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming online today for the talk, just to learn about how coaching might assist you in your professional and your personal lives. And as Serena said, I do have quite a diverse background, both in clinical and non-clinical. I've had lots of fun doing lots of different things. And I think over time, that's probably what led me to do coaching. I was not attracted to it at all in the beginning. But with further research, I did go into it, which I'll touch on a little bit as we go through. So I am an occupational therapist and a coach, and I love doing both. So what I am going to go through today is to get a little bit of an idea of, if anyone's on here live and you want to pop in the chat box, a little bit about yourself and what attracted you to the webinar, also your professional background, just so I can get a little bit of a picture. And then further through the talk, we'll go through what is coaching, how coaching works, and why coaching is useful for professionals to access for themselves. Now, with that, we'll also do a little bit of a group coaching session. And it's not a group coaching session that would happen in an organisation. It's a group coaching session that each individual is on their own, and you'll be writing things down in response to the questions that I have. Whereas if it was a one-on-one session, it would be me meeting with you, whether it's face-to-face or online or over the phone, and we would be having a conversation. Then we'll go on to how coaching can be applied for our clients, which is quite a useful skill to have as a health professional. It doesn't matter which discipline you're from, it is a useful skill to have, and we'll touch on that as well. So if anybody is online and you would like to introduce yourself, just pop it in the chat box. I'll give you a few moments. Okay, we'll keep going. Oh, we do have one. Okay, we will keep going. So what is coaching? Coaching is a conversational process between the coach or therapist and the client that is future focused and solution oriented. It is different to some of the disciplines that we're used to, like OT, psychology, even social work and things like that, because of the nature of it and the way that the relationship is between the coach or the therapist and the client, being more conversational as opposed to more hands-on or more expert specific, which you would have with a professional or with a therapist. So we'll also go through that a little bit. It's about the client having dreams, goals, aspirations, even something that's negative that they want to move away from. Quite often that would lead them to coaching, and therefore give them an opportunity to reestablish what goals or dreams or aspirations they might have. And it's also in regards to people that are feeling a little bit lost. So a friend of mine who's an architect, she came to coaching quite early on while I was still doing my course, and she was really excited about it. And for her, it was retouching what sort of passion she had away from being an architect. She's been an architect for 20 years. She's got 3 kids, but she was feeling quite lost in terms of how far she'd gone in her profession and how much she had sort of forgotten about what was important to her. Her professional life was important, her personal life was important, her kids were important, but there were certain things missing. And through the coaching, she sort of reestablished that it was certain creative paths that she used to have prior to kids that were really important that she wanted to get back into, and was finding that she had a little bit more time. The other thing that coaching offers in terms of the training, so there's all sorts of different training out there. If you want to do coaching to the ICF, the International Coaching Federation level, you will be taught a method, you will be taught theories and philosophies, and you'll have a model. You'll have more than one model, but you'll have a model to follow throughout your coaching sessions. If you're just applying it as a skill set as a therapist, you may still have a model, and I'll touch on a model throughout the talk, but you're not necessarily guided as much through it. So when someone is going through coaching, so if you're coming for professional coaching, know that it is steeped in theoretical frameworks and that there is a methodology behind it, there is a model behind it. However, given that it's a conversational process and it's very client-centered, it is very much based on the wisdom, the energy and the goals of the client, as opposed to the coach being the expert or the other professional being the expert. And I'll touch on that in a little bit too. It's also very much about exercising choices, and it's about the client's choices and them investigating those choices and how it works for them. It's not letting me move. There we go. So what is coaching continued? In terms of the theoretical foundations, it's very much based on human development. And with that, it looks at people's ages, where they are in their lives, what roles they have, and looking at that type of developmental progress. So you could be coaching children, you could be coaching teenagers, you could be coaching adults, professionals, executives, you can do health coaching, you can do lifestyle coaching. There's all different ones. But when you're working with a coach, certain things will come up in the conversation, and they will be around human development and working with that tension or synergy of human development. Coaching is very steeped in psychology, very much psychotherapy as well, which was a bit daunting for me at the beginning, but I've started getting my head around it so much more than I did, and I actually quite enjoy it. Spirituality, some people that's really important for. It actually does come up in a lot of conversations, particularly now. I think society is in a different spot and people are investigating or questioning spirituality in a totally different form to probably 20 years ago when I first started working as an OT. So I guess spirituality in the general sense, not necessarily what they're going to do, but I guess as an importance or as an anchoring point for clients. Philosophy comes into coaching and the education around what you learn to be a coach, and education. And it is a lot about self-education as well. So being very driven by the client as opposed to by the coach or by the therapist. Now, when we look at coaching, what it is not, and not to get it confused with, it can stand alone as an emerging profession. And when we look at it being future focused and solution focused, we could say, well, that's really OT as well, or that's psychology as well. But when you really understand, or you've done a coaching course, you'll understand how it's very different to all of these different things that all of us as health professionals can do. And here's a rough outline. So counselling, people tend to come with a problem, and the counsellor will work with that person to gain insights into the problem and the root causes. The counsellor will quite often have a plan for someone to work on, but it's how that plan and how those insights are utilised that you'll find are quite different between counselling and coaching. Mentoring, a lot of people that I've met who are health professionals have done a diploma in mentoring and coaching, and they are quite different. And you can blend the two and you can keep them separate. So the mentor generally is imparting their knowledge or their experience on the other person, whereas the coach tends to elicit the information from what they're seeing is emerging in the person, or determining what that client needs to go and find or go and do. When we look at training, training is very much a transfer of knowledge or skills from the person doing the training to the client. And then leading and managing. When we have a leader or we have a manager, they're the one that tends to hold the vision, share the vision, sets the direction towards the vision or the visions, and implements the actions, or has a lot more control over the actions, even in a team setting. Consulting is imparting that specific expertise into that area and providing that to an individual or to an organisation or what have you. So coaching can blend with all of those, just like coaching can blend with all of our disciplines, but it also can stand alone, which we'll go through and we'll look at. How does coaching work? So coaching is quite a creative process. And I was quite surprised at how creative it is. And I think it's the blending of all those different areas. So the theoretical areas in terms of the psychology and the philosophy and the education. When all of those come together, what bubbles up for the person is quite amazing. And it's very much about the client's trajectory. So it's very, very client-centered. And all health professionals will say we're all client-centered. And that is probably what gives us a leading edge on the coaching skill set, is we get what it means to be client-centered. Learning the further coaching skill also gives us that edge of being able to step back in our profession and really let the client lead for a while. When it's just coaching, it's not just applying the coaching skill set as a professional. It is very much about the coach's presence and the coach stepping back and letting the client lead. The other thing is the coach is there to facilitate that journey or that trajectory of the client. It's helping them investigate goals and dreams, but also looking at barriers, looking at current situations and delving into those in relation to what the dreams are. Because I think quite often what happens, it's those barriers, it's those current situations where a little bit of gold of information is for the client. And once they start to realize that and work through that, then they start applying it. And that's when the changes happen for the client. So how does coaching work? The core focus of coaching is assisting people as they wrestle with the universal human dynamic between the desire for differentiation and unique self-expression versus the need to integrate, connect, meet expectations and demands of their environment and make difference in the world. So that particular quote is actually from an OT text about coaching conversations in OT. And I think it just sums up beautifully what it is. As a coach, you quite often see people working through. They really want to make a difference. They really want to change or have a different way forward. However, the things that tend to hold them back more so than anything, and particularly professionals, is meeting expectations of others, meeting their own expectations of others. Professionals tend to be quite high achievers and will have quite high expectations, and investigating those with them is often quite a barrier, and getting over that barrier quite often is what enables a lot of change and making a difference in the world. I think all health professionals want to make a difference in the world for the people that they work with. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone into it, or they've sort of come to a stalemate in their profession as a health professional, regardless of discipline, and they're at a burnt out stage where they kind of think, I can't keep going and giving as much as I need to. How do I make the difference that I know that I can make, or how do I see more of a difference? So investigating those types of things with the client. So why did I go into coaching? I think I'd just had my first child. But before that, I'd started getting a little bit disillusioned with OT. And I think it was a lot of the politics in different areas that I'd worked. And I kept sort of coming up against barriers that I couldn't change. So they were well beyond my control. And I just kept thinking, I don't really want to go back into that field, or I don't really want to go back into that area. Lots of different things. And I think I was just ready for something really, really different. However, it wasn't, as I said there, it was 12 years ago. It was 12 years in as a health professional that I'd kind of started feeling that way and trying to work out which way do I go? Do I specialize here? Do I specialize there? And I was just a little bit lost. So then I had my children and I kept working as an OT. I was in private practice. Then I'd gone back into injury management. And I still was finding I was a little bit disillusioned, and no area of specialty was jumping out at me. And the other thing after having kids was I realized I needed flexibility. I still really liked working in that goal-focused area, and I knew I loved working with people. But I didn't not want to be an OT. It was just so strong that I needed to stay with that. And another thing that came up for me is I really started to take an interest in working with well and unwell people. So moving away from a medical model was something that kept coming up for me. The other thing that kept coming up was coaching, but not necessarily in a positive way. It was more that there was all this lifestyle coaching and health coaching, and it had a bit of a negative connotation for me for quite a while. And then lots of little different things changed, and I took the plunge and I started researching and read some books. I met Jeanette Isaacs-Young, and I actually did some coaching with her, which was probably the best thing I ever did. That really got me on path, on goal, and just went, right, I just need to go and do this. I need to put all those expectations from myself, from other people, whatever it is, and I need to just go with what I'm interested in. And I did. So that's how I got into coaching. But I still very much enjoy the blend of coaching and OT. I think it really can change the way a health professional works, particularly in that goal-focused area of things like rehab, OC rehab, pediatrics, in terms of working with the other person and really getting them to elicit their goals, even though we will always have secondary goals required from us as the health professional and the organisation, or the requirements of the role. The coaching and the way you approach your client can actually make it a lot quicker in terms of the input from you as a health professional, and it can elicit a lot of control from the client and therefore motivation. So why is coaching beneficial for us as professionals? As I said, I underwent coaching with Jeanette, which was fantastic. And as part of the ICF coaching courses, you have to be coached and do so much coaching. It is crazy. You can get a little bit coached out, but it's really good because it creates a lot of self-awareness. And these are some of the areas in which coaching can really, really help professionals develop. It will assist you to achieve your goals and aspirations, whether it's as a professional or outside of work, or blending those two together. Sometimes they do become a little bit more entwined than we ever think that they will, but that's just the way life goes. And getting clear on that and being okay with that is probably a really good thing to work out with some coaching. It helps with career and role changes. So career-wise, it could be that you're aiming for a management position, or you're aiming to move into a different area, and that coaching will just help you work through some of those barriers and blocks, but really help you understand why you're wanting that. The other thing it can do is, if you're promoted or you find yourself in a position, a senior position or a management position that you didn't necessarily see yourself in, it means someone else has possibly seen something in you that makes you really useful and appropriate for that position. And getting some coaching to see that in yourself can be really useful, particularly in the beginning days of moving into those roles. In terms of role changes, it can be role changes within an organisation or a team. It can be role changes from going from being a professional to being a parent. It can be role changes from being a parent going back into the workforce. Any type of role change needs a lot of self-awareness and change within. And it's those role changes that we have difficulty with or that we're struggling with that tend to work really well with coaching. The coaching will also provide a lot of insight into being, doing, having, and achieving. As professionals, we are very much achievers. We love achieving. We continuously achieve. That is what we do. Whether it's achieving for our clients, whether it's achieving for ourselves, whether it's the next goal we're aiming for, we achieve. And that does lead us to burnout for quite a lot of professionals, but it also leads us to a point where we do question a lot about what we're doing. And having that coaching to gain the insight into that achieving, whether it's positive, negative, whether it's related to goals, career, role changes, or what have you. But it also brings insight into being. Sometimes just being is okay. Sometimes it's how we do things that we need to step back and investigate a little bit further. Sometimes it's what we think we need to have versus what we want to have versus what we do have, and how important that it is to each of us. It also looks at assisting with perceived stress and life balance. Now, everybody has a low level of stress these days. There's no way around avoiding it. That's just where our lives are. However, sometimes we perceive a situation as more stressful than it is based on a lot of different things. And getting in touch with what that stress is about can sometimes alleviate a lot of the stress and help you work through that particular situation or lots of situations. And applying coaching to those situations is a really good way to understand that stress, because quite often stress is there for a reason, in terms of our body and our neurological makeup. And understanding that stress and working with that stress can actually move us forward a lot quicker or away from the stress than it would if we didn't investigate it. Life balance. I don't know, I struggle with life balance. I think we need to find balance at every given time. I don't think there's any real method in having the same life balance all the time. I think it's that balance at a different time based on priorities at that given time in the moment. So building a business, your priorities are quite specific when you're building a business, and life balance can appear to be quite out of balance, but it might be for a set time. So if you know that set time and you're trying to achieve those goals, then that balance will be different then than once all those clients are there, or once there's a lot of cash flow, or once you're at a certain spot. Finding that balance is different depending on what we're doing, and getting the insights into that, and having that coach on board to help you find those things can quite often be very, very useful. A lot of business owners will get coaching for that. I do a little bit of coaching for an accounting firm in Brisbane. So they focus on the business coaching, and I tend to look at the more life coaching. I don't like to say life coaching, but it is a little bit, it's them finding what their goals are and why they won't just go and play golf. What is stopping them from going to play golf? Why did they go into business in the first place if they don't have control of their time? So looking at those things and why they do that. Change management. Coaching is fantastic for change management. Lots and lots of organizations, big organizations, use it a lot. They will have professional coaches in there all the time, because the biggest thing with change for anyone is self-awareness. Now, as health professionals, what we do know with our clients is they're usually in a moment of change. That's usually something they haven't chosen. They've had a stroke, they've had a car accident, their child's been born with disabilities, whatever it is, that particular situation, they're in change. we come in with goals, we come in with therapies, we come in with expert knowledge to assist that person to move to the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. When we look at a professional, the change that they might need to go through is to grow into a role, or to understand why they don't want to be in a role, and that it's okay to step back and find a different path. The organisation that they're in might be going through change, and they need to understand what their response is to that change, and therefore that's what the coaching is in place for. All of us want change, and quite often to get the goals that we need to get, or to move in the direction that we want to go, it's the change that we need to look at. And with change, it's the self-awareness, but in it comes lots of values. It is very personal, and working through those things can be quite useful. The other thing with coaching is, as professionals, we can claim it on our PD points. You might come to coaching for 1 or 2 times, and it's an hour each time, and you can claim that for 2 hours, because the insights that you will get that you can apply in your professional life, your personal life, in your interventions will be huge. So I suggest giving it a go and seeing what comes out of it. Now, we're going to touch on the group coaching session. Now, this is just to run through with you what it would be like to be coached. Now, remembering it's not a conversation between us, because obviously we're not on the phone or anything. This is about you answering the questions as we go through them and writing them on your piece of paper, and I will guide you through that. In a coaching session, it would be a conversation, and it's actually more about the client, the professional, doing the talking than it is the coach, because the coach is there to facilitate, to ask the questions, to direct the questions, to notice the journey that the client's on, that they quite often feel quite lost in. So we're going to get started. What I want you to do first of all is to think about a goal, aspiration, a dream, or something that you don't want, something that you want to move away from. But if it's the negative thing first, I don't want you to focus too much on moving away from it. I want you to focus on the other side. What would your life be if it wasn't there, or you could move away from it? So think about that for a minute, and then what we're going to do is a visual flirt, which I will explain. So jot that down on your piece of paper, or conjure it up in your mind. Okay, so we're going to do a visual flirt. I didn't know what these were, and I don't do these in all my coaching sessions, but it's a nice little tool to take away, particularly sometimes if you feel like you need something a little bit more to grasp onto in terms of something that you're not sure about, like a decision or why something doesn't make sense. So sit back in your chair, close your eyes, and I want you to think about that goal, that inspiration, that life that you want. Make sure your feet are flat on the floor. Your hips are back in your chair. Just take a few deep breaths. Now, when I tell you to, you're going to open your eyes. Not just yet, it will be in a little while. And whatever your eyes land on first is what I want you to focus on. But I don't want you to focus on it in terms of exactly what it is. So it might be blinds, it might be a picture, it might be your computer screen, it might be a picture of your husband or your wife or your children. But look at it for the quality that it is. So what does it represent? So keep thinking about your goal, or the way that you want to go, or what you want to move away from, and therefore what do you want your life to look like should that obstacle or situation not be there. And then I want you to open your eyes. Now, what is it that you see? So for me, I can see some blinds. But it's not the blinds that I'm looking at. It's probably more what I can see on the other side of the blinds. So while you're sitting there looking at this particular area or object or what have you, whatever took your attention at that point in time, focus on what it represents at this point in time. You can draw it. If it's got colours, if it's got textures or something about it, you can write about it. Just give yourself a little moment and do that on the piece of paper in front of you. And something to remember with the visual flirt is it might not mean anything at this moment in time, but something in terms of a thought might pop up later in the day or later in the week and you think, oh my gosh, that's related to that in that way. So I'll give you a couple more moments to do that. Now, think about what you want your life to look like in 1 year's time, in 5 years' time, in a longer period of time. I think it depends where you are in your life as well. If you're a new grad, it might be, I just want to travel. You've been working for 10 years, it might be a career change or to have kids or whatever you want that life to look like, think about it and jot it down on your piece of paper. And whatever bubbles up, because remember, nobody can hear or see you, so give yourself the time and space to do it. And also think about what you will be doing, thinking, wearing, seeing, saying in that future life, not now. And how will your life be different? Again, how will you feel? What will be different about it? Will it be easier? Will there be more cash flow? Will you be happier? Will you have different friends? Will you be living in a different place? Write those things down. Now think about your life now. Think about what you're doing that you like and jot it down. Think about what you would like to change. And also think about where it is you want to be and what you need to start changing now to achieve what you're aiming for, even if it's tiny baby steps. And when you hear or see the things that you've written or those thoughts are popping up in your head, what are you saying or thinking to yourself right now? Write that down or draw it. It doesn't, whichever way is more useful to you. And when you remember your goal or which way you want to go or what you want that life to look like, I want you to think about what's missing. So I've already asked you to think about little steps that you can start taking, but what is missing from what is now to what you want? Are there any assumptions about people, about a situation, about skill sets, about expectations that you're making? And think about that, because quite often we make a lot of assumptions for things that we don't know. It might be based on prior history with a person or a situation, past experience and things like that. It doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen now. So really think about, are you making any assumptions about any of this right now? And what strengths can you draw on? What strengths do you know that you have? Do people tell you that you have, that you can draw on? And write those down, make them quite clear, because quite often as professionals, we don't give ourselves a lot of credit for our strengths. We just bundle through the day and we get all of our stuff done. And we don't often give ourselves time to sit down and consider, actually, what am I good at? What am I good at now that I wasn't good at before that's changed? What are people telling me that I'm not listening to? So what are you good at? What are your strengths? Now, since we've started, what I want you to think about is, with all the bits that you've thought about, thoughts that have popped into your head, assumptions, strengths, anything that we've discussed, what is jumping out at you as most significant right now? Is it something you just think, I can't be in this role for any longer? Is it, I really need to start my PhD? Is it, if I don't get the leak in our house fixed right now, we're going to have a massive water bill? That is something on mine. But what is most significant right now in terms of everything that we're working on? Now, this next question might not actually apply to everyone, but it will apply to quite a few. What disturbs you about this now? Is it that you feel like you can't do it, that you think that it's never going to happen? Is it the response that you think you might get from other people? What disturbs you right now in regards to what you're thinking about, what you're aiming for? And how can this be useful right now? What is it in that disturbance that you can generate some momentum forward from? Sometimes it's something like, I don't think that I could do that. And something that's useful about that is you could ask 3 people what your strengths are and why it could work. It might be the disturbance is something that makes me want to go and get that new skill set because I'm actually not that happy where I am right now. It might be I've moved into a leadership role and I don't recognize what skills I have, but I need to spend some time investigating that. So what is that disturbance? And in terms of everything that we've looked at to this moment, what insights have you had? What's popped up? Have you had inspiration? Have you had any realizations? Have any assumptions sort of caught you unaware? What are those insights? And how can you apply these? How can you apply these to this situation? How can you apply them to different situations in your life or in your job or in your career change, whatever it might be, with your children, with your clients? What steps will you take to start moving forward or towards your goal? Now, this is where we're getting a little bit into the action plan based on some of the other bits and pieces that you would have written down or thought about. So make that action plan things that you will actually do. I will go and get that skill set. I will read that book. I will contact that person. If you're really particular about your goals, like a lot of OTs, I will do it in this amount of time or by this date or whatever your time frame is. Make your goals as specific or as open as you like, because the thing is, it's up to you to go and do that action plan. It's not up to anybody else here other than yourself to go and start stepping forward into this new way of being. As you're writing those actions or those steps or what have you, I want you to think about how likely you are to do either separately in terms of the steps or all of those steps on a scale of 1 to 10. So you can rate each one, or you can just do a big rating. Now, if you're not at an 8, I want you to write down what you need to do or what needs to happen to move your rating to an 8. So I'm going to keep going because I'm just conscious of time and also that people will be writing. That's essentially a really, really quick coaching type session. The questions wouldn't necessarily be those questions because it's based on what's happening in each moment and the conversation, the information that's coming from you as the client to me or to the other coach, whoever you might be working with. But that's a really brief coaching session in terms of following a methodology, but also in terms of the types of questions that you might come up against. But it also will give you a feeling of what bubbles up inside. Sometimes there's negativity, sometimes there's emotions, sometimes there's absolute flatness, like this is just not going to happen. Sometimes there's sheer exhilaration and excitedness, and sometimes none of that happens until the end of the day when you've had time to process it, or the end of the week, or maybe some little things popped up during the week that started happening. You think, oh, wow, that could be related to that. And that generates your excitement. But just keep in mind that this is kind of like what the coaching session would be like, except there would be a lot more conversation. So if we move on and we were to consider using a coaching approach with our clients, we would then need to be the coach or the therapist, whichever way you want to look at it. But when we apply a coaching approach with our clients, regardless of our discipline, regardless of our background, and regardless of our area, it's about presence, it's about questions, it's about mindset, and it's about listening. So if you are working in pediatrics, for example, the coaching might not actually be with the child. The coaching is probably more appropriate to apply with the parents or the main caregivers or the educators, depending on where you are working as that therapist. But it's very much an approach that you can use to elicit the information from those people to help that child move forward, or to help them have a different mindset and a different thought process. Now, when we look at the presence, it's the presence of the professional. And if you're using a coaching approach, what you're not doing at that moment in time is you're not being the expert. So what I teach the students at the uni here, that when you apply a coaching approach, it can be as little as the questions that you might use. There might be 2 questions that you use at your initial assessment to really let the client feel like they're in control of the current situation. And anyone working in NDIS is probably going to start thinking about how they change the way they work with their clients, given how much control their clients will have over those finances and the tension that that causes in terms of the professional need for prescription of equipment, prescription of intervention, and what have you. But that presence can change. So at the beginning, you might use it in your initial assessment. You might then have an intervention where you might use 20 minutes of coaching with the client just to open up thought processes, delve in and find some values that might be blocking their ability to move forward, or why do they feel the way they feel about something. And then you might have a little bit of coaching at the end in terms of the action plan, so that they get used to really thinking about how do they set their goals? What are their goals? What are they going to do to meet it? Not what are you going to do as a therapist? What are they going to do? So a lot of OTs, a lot of social workers, a lot of physios, a lot of speechies, a lot of dietitians, a lot of the health professionals on here do that. But if you from the beginning have moments in your interventions where you're not the expert, it's like you hand over the control, you ask the right questions, then it opens up a different type of relationship with the client. And that is the present. Then the questions, a lot of the questions are around what questions. What is important to you? What would you like to achieve? What is it about this situation that's not working for you? What do you think you need to move to that next point? Okay, they're the questions. Now, if you learn coaching in terms of being a therapist, you can still use a methodology or a model. So my coaching was through Global Coaching Institute, and we got taught the Emerge model, and then we touched on the Grow model. The Grow model, you can go on Google. I've actually got a reference in here that you can go and access as well, and it's quite straightforward. And I teach the uni students the Grow model as well. The questions can also be placed on different parts of the models that you learn, because different questions will elicit different thought processes and elicit different responses. So learning that can be really useful in terms of where you use it in an intervention or as an intervention modality type approach. The mindset of a coach is very much around curiosity. It's very non-judgmental. That's where you sort of hand over in terms of the control or being the expert or being the professional, and you let the person have the control and be the expert in their life at that time. So that mindset is quite different to being a therapist and quite different to a lot of our training, but it's really useful. And listening. When we're in a coaching approach, or we're being a coach, or we're just asking a lot of questions, it's also about the listening. Don't ask too many questions too quickly, because there's a lot of information that will come. And as most of you will know, it's okay to have a little bit of silence, because people are thinking, and they're thinking quite deeply. There's a lot of stuff going on for them. So that generous listening will also help with the next question that you might need to ask, or the next action that needs to happen. Now, the other thing that you need to consider as a professional using a coaching approach is balancing the tension between when you need to be a professional, when you need to be the expert, and when you can let the client be very much in control of what's going on. Okay, and it's a fine balance. I can't say it's always easy, but it's a fine balance to work between. And it's also something where you can offer information. Fiona Graham developed occupational performance coaching as her PhD, and she uses it a lot in pediatrics with the parents. And what can happen is, if you can balance the amount of questions and gaining information from the client, it will almost motivate them to take more control. It'll motivate them to be more goal-oriented, and it will give them a sense of control in their life rather than taking that hopeless and helpless approach. So if we're applying this coaching approach, what it does do, because it is very client-centered, it enables the client more. We're all about enablement. Every discipline is about enablement. That's why we do what we do. Okay, it's about us also offering some of that professional and expert knowledge. If you would like that shower chair, do you think that home mods are required first, particularly for those NDS type clients? If you're struggling with this with your child in terms of behaviour, would you like me to give you some information on some of these different aspects that you can access and read up on or use? Instead of always giving them the information to move the session faster, if you've opened it up so that they know, in terms of the client, they know that they have a certain level of control and they need to take a certain level of responsibility, then it will enable them and motivate them quicker, rather than us coming in and controlling everything and being the expert and the professional and having the power in the relationship, because we've already got the power in the relationship. What we need them to understand is they need to take some of that power and they need to use that to motivate themselves. The other thing is, it provides a sense of control over their life and situations. Once they start seeing the positivity in terms of the interventions, not necessarily the coaching, but the interventions and them taking control in some of those actions, that sense of control will bubble over into different areas of their lives. And you can go in and ask them, well, how are you using that here? Could you apply that there? What do you think of that? And what we always find, I guess, as therapists is the time that we allow between sessions and the time that little pennies will drop is also those insights that will come up for those clients. And particularly if we're tapping into that coaching approach and asking those questions and really enabling our clients using that coaching approach. The other thing that it will do is it will allow that self-directed learning. And if we're looking at the strengths-based nature of the coaching, what it does is it looks at transferable skills that your client has. A lot of your clients will have bought houses or they've already achieved certain things in life. You can start tapping into that and getting them to apply those in these situations that you're in with them. And once they start doing that and they recognize that they've been in a certain part in their life, that they already have that skill set, the flow and effect can be quite quick and it can be very positive for them and very enabling. So if we have any questions and answers, pop them in the chat box. Or if you're listening to this as a recording, do not hesitate to contact me. I've got my contacts coming up and we can go through anything that might have come up, any questions that you have or any coaching that you like. I know Serena has the flyer. So if you are interested in some coaching, definitely contact me and we can go through what it entails. You'll get one free. I definitely recommend having the two because I think you'll get a lot more out of it. The first one, sometimes it's just a lot of discussion and a lot of questions. The second one is probably where you'll get a lot more insights and a lot more out of it. And here's the reference list, so you can go ahead and investigate any of those things. I might just quickly say Duckworth is actually Angela Duckworth, who does all the grit stuff. So she's also written other books and articles that might be appropriate to read in terms of the coaching and why coaching would be appropriate. The book Enabling Positive Change is also on there. John Whitmore is the person who you will want to Google to look up the GROW model, which I touched on as well. And the last reference there is just the website for Kelly McGongill, and she's the one that talks about stress and initially started talking about stress in terms of how it's bad for our health, how it's bad for us. But in actual fact, she's changed her research to say that we can use stress to benefit us and it is there for a reason. So definitely check out some of her work. Hi, Serena.
Well, that was great. Thank you so much, Bronwyn. A free coaching session while we're here. I love it. And there's your contact details. Yes. So please contact Bronwyn. I know I will be booking in soon. Thank you so much for the special offer as well. Very much appreciated. I've been scribbling madly and I've written lots of things to chase off.
Oh, good.
There's so many things I want to do. It's hard to... I'm one of those people that there's so many things it's hard to sometimes focus. And I think, it's something that a lot of health professionals have in common, that we're, as you say, we're all achievers and we all have lots of grand plans. And it's, we don't often sit down and think about it and write your goals in such a way. We just don't sit still long enough often. So,
and yet we do it for everybody else except ourselves.
So can you just tell me, God help me, it sounds like I would love to do a coaching course.
Yes. They are good.
So can you tell me a little bit more about the training?
Yeah. So it depends. If you want to do it through to the ICF level, then the coaching course needs to be ICF accredited. So if you go onto their website, they will have loads of courses. The course that I did was through Global Coaching Institute and it's run by an OT and a psychotherapist. So it is fantastic. They already know what sort of we want. They do a lot of executive coaching training as well. They can also adapt their training. So if you're in a department and you just want to learn how to coach, they can also do that. There's other health coaching. There's Wellness Australia through Fiona Cosgrove. So other people or other disciplines might be more interested in the health coaching specifically. So you can do a course all the way through to ICF accreditation. I'm assuming through there she was looking at getting it to that level. Or you can just do it, because a lot of health professionals are actually insured to do coaching as part of their interventions anyway. So check your insurance. 2, check the ICF if you want to do a course right the way through, so that you've got that as another skill set or as another type of, I guess, profession that you want to work in. Also, I can, depending, I guess, on your discipline and what you're interested in, if you email me, I can send you out some contacts of people that can come and do some training, whether it's a one-day training. The other one is Jen Gash in the UK runs OT Coach online.
Yeah.
You don't have to be an OT to do it. You can just sign up, pay £120, and it goes over 6 weeks, and it's supposed to be amazing. So that's another option as well. There's lots of options that we can tap into.
Yeah. That sounds like a really great introductory online course almost, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the training that you did, was that face-to-face?
Both. So we would have to do face-to-face set times, and then there was a lot of online face-to-face, and then a lot of online not face-to-face, and then a lot of coaching practice. So it was a full year that if you want to do it right through, it's a full year of sort of focused learning. I don't think I was expecting it to be quite so focused.
Quite intense.
Yes.
And quite insightful for yourself personally, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I wondered if I know watching, we might have some therapists that work in a private practice or that own their own private practice. And you said that you go into organisations at times. Do you go into health private practices?
I haven't as yet, but I would really like to, because I think the coaching there would, one, help from a business perspective. As I said, the accountant contacted me saying, would you come and work with our clients? Because we're spending all this time talking about this stuff that's not relevant to the accounting side or the business coaching. So from that perspective, it would really work. It would really help them achieve those goals or move to the next step. But it would also help in private practice have that person there for them to work with when they're feeling a little bit lost, or they've got some big grand plan, and helping them anchor it so that they've got those really concrete sort of goals that they can meet and achieve. Yeah.
And focus. Yeah. And I guess my last question is, give me some examples of when people come to you for coaching, but also some of those examples, some of those scenarios when maybe they should come to you, but people tend not to.
Yeah. So one was my friend who is the architect. She just jumped. But I think her background was that she was such a high achiever, such a perfectionist. Yeah. And they'd already had that creative passion there, but she'd just lost it. She'd lost sort of where she was at and focusing on what she needed. So getting that insight sort of pushed her forward into a whole different realm. But now she goes and she actually judges a lot of architectural builds around Queensland. She took all these different steps beyond that, but it was just those insights at that time that she really needed. Other times when people have come is because they are stuck. So a friend of mine who's a teacher has come recently. She teaches and she runs I don't know, is it telemarketing? It's not telemarketing, but she sells face products.
Yeah.
And she was getting really lost because she's making so much money on the one hand, and then she's got this profession and she's a bit lost in what she actually wants to do. So she's sort of come to get clarity and get the steps to move forward, which is quite good. Another time is when you're feeling quite stressed, it's a really good idea just to tap into what it is, because sometimes we don't have that vision around us. But when the coach can see what's going on and listen and understand whether there's negativity or positivity just in the conversation, we can bring that up, and that will help as well. So you can do it to achieve goals, but you can do it when things aren't right. Because on the other side of what's not right is what is right, and we can work through those things.
And do you find people come when things are going really well and they think, I need to, this is a strategy session almost.
And they'll use it just to plan.
Yeah.
Just to plan, just to say, right, this is where I'm at. I've got to this point now. I really, really need to move to that point, and I need you to keep me on track, or I need somebody to just work with me so I can get my thoughts straight.
Yeah. I also really loved your example of a new parent back into the workforce. I mean, I've been there. This is why I set up my businesses. Because it's such an epic transition, and you don't really have a lot of support or a lot of understanding about how to make that transition. So I think that's a really great time for people to seek out coaching, and the other way too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, and if you take that time off, which a lot of parents do, sometimes that confidence goes down a little bit. And it's not that you haven't been achieving, it's just that not doing what you do every day in your professional sphere or wherever you work can actually be a little bit of a confidence deboost, and having that coaching to really recognize what's important, what you're good at, why you want to go back to it. Those types of things are really, really good to bring to coaching. And it might only be the 2 sessions. You might not need a lot. I think people think they need to come forever. It's like going to a therapist, and it's not. It could be 1, 2, it could be 5 sessions. It could be just tapping in every now and again when the client needs it. It's not actually, it doesn't have to be a set plan either.
That's what I was going to say. Do people sort of come annually, you know, for
top up?
For a touch up.
I just need to touch base again with where I'm at.
I'm going to do this.
That's right. So it can be fashioned in any way the person needs.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds wonderful. Thanks again so much for your time. What a valuable session. I'm sure those watching live or in the recording are going to get a lot out of it. And I really hope that we can book in.
Right. Send me an email, give me a call.
Lots of people coming for your expertise. So thank you so much for the special offer you've given our audience again.
Thank you very much.
All right, so make sure you check out our website, Allied Health Virtual Conference. We've got lots of virtual conferences coming up, clinical and non-clinical, over the year. And last of all, Bronwyn, I hope you're listening, the Australian Allied Health Awards. Nominating, this is going to be so much fun. There's lots and lots of nominations in, but they will close soon. So hop over and start nominating yourself and your colleagues. That's alliedhealthawards.com.au. All right, thanks again so much for your time. We'll see you soon.